Hi, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order. It is 12:08, and this is the Act 378 Subcommittee meeting of the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council. Rakisha, would you mind calling the roll?
Not at all. All right, Ms. Hayno?
Here.
Ms. Hayno's here. Ms. Nguyen? Ms. Stewart? Mr. Taylor? Ms. Zhu?
Here.
Ms. Zhu is here. Ms. Palazola?
Here.
And Ms. Palazola is here. You have three, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Rakisha. Before we get started, I just need to remind you of a few rules. For committee members and members of the public attending in person, please raise your hand to speak and wait to be recognized by chair before speaking. Do we have public? We do. And to help the meeting run smoothly, please keep side conversations to a minimum and comments related to the topic we are discussing. For those committee members who are attending virtually, remember you must be on camera and have your first and last name showing to be counted towards a quorum. And please keep your microphones muted unless you're called on by the chair. Electronically raise your hand to request to speak and wait to be called on by the chair. For attendees, electronically raise your hand to request to speak. Once recognized by the chair, your microphones will be turned on. After speaking, the microphones will be returned to mute. Also, the Q&A is only to be used for those needing an ADA accommodation to participate in the meeting. Public comment will not be accepted via the Q&A except for those individuals who requested the accommodation. As for order, committee members in person and virtually will be allowed to speak first. Public members in person will be called on, followed by public participating virtually who have their hands raised. Comments in the Q&A will be addressed last. As with all hybrid meetings, it can be difficult to keep track of those wanting to speak in person and virtually. Please be patient. All comments and questions from the public may be subjected to 2 minutes at the discretion of the chair. So keep that in mind. Depending on time constraints, we may also limit comments to once per issue. All comments about a person's character will not be allowed. And finally, members of the public will have the opportunity to provide public comment before each vote and during designated public comment periods. The chair may also use their discretion to determine if comments will be accepted outside of those times. And now we'll move on to the approval of the January meeting summary. So everyone should have reviewed the January meeting summary, which is attached to your agenda. You received via email. It's in our packets. Those of us who are here in person, it's also online. I need a motion to adopt the January meeting summary.
A motion.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Jill?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Taylor and a second by Ms. Hayno. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment? The motion to accept January's meeting has been adopted. Can I get to ask for any objections? Did I follow that process right?
Change it.
Yeah, you don't have to vote for the parliamentarian. You don't have to do you can just, yeah, you can just vote by agreement.
Yeah, unanimous. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna skip over the OAS for now. Okay, so Kelly Monroe with the Arc of Louisiana is not here yet. Hopefully she'll be able to join us and she can provide that report later. So we will move on to our report. We'll move on to the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. Herman, is Herman gonna present on the LG spotlight?
Yes.
You are, okay,
No,
We have kids.
okay, because I'm here, so, okay. You want me to introduce her?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is Kenzie on?
She's being moved over.
Okay. Kenzie Lassane is with our Region 3 Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. She is the director. I think that she be moved over.
Yeah, you saw the share people.
We're just waiting for her to be switched over as a presenter.
See, we just can't hear you.
No, can't hear you. It shows you're unmuted, but,
Can you hear me now?
There we
yes.
go.
Okay, so Kenzie is she's gonna share, what we call an LGE spotlight, which is local government entity. She is with Region 3, the director, and so she is gonna just share some good things that are happening in her region in regards to our ISF funds and flexible family funds, which is what we talk a lot about in this committee. So Kenzie, thank you for accepting that invitation and
Thank you.
have the floor.
All right, thanks. So I wanted to try to find something that may have been a little more unique to our region. We do a lot of the same type of funding requests that you see across the state. You know, IFS supports PCA hours, vocational services in some situations. We help with incontinence supplies, all the typical things, modifications. But one area that we've kind of noticed more recently, but particularly because we are a very low-lying area, we are the bayou regions. A lot of people are in flood zones, and since we've had our last significant hurricane in 2021, a lot of homes had to be raised to get their insurance and things like that. So we're seeing homes higher off the ground than usual, and we still have individuals who require ramps and modifications to get in and out the home. And your typical ramps are not always suitable because of these homes that are raised up high in the air. One particular case we had recently, this year, as a matter of fact, was an individual who had to use a wheelchair for accessibility, and his parents, for quite some time, had been carrying him up the stairs. Their home was raised 49 feet, and the way it was situated on the property, even if they wanted to do a standard ramp, it would have had to come out too far, and there just wasn't room for it. So we had OCDD Resource Center go out and kind of work with that family and figure out what could be implemented to assess, to get him accessibility in and out the home where the family members weren't having to carry him up the stairs and then carry his wheelchair. And so from that process, we were able to get them a vertical platform lift. The family has reported that it's made a huge difference. They are able to get him in and out the home safely. They're not having to carry him anymore. And this item is a little bit more costly than your standard ramps. And that's why, although they didn't have a waiver, they have an EPSDT services, they would have still needed assistance for that. You were looking at about between, the estimates came back for that item between 12 and like 15,000. I want to say this one ran about 14. So it is a little bit more costly to be able to put a device like that on a home. So even someone with a waiver would probably need some assistance from IFS as well. So we're very happy to do that. He is living much more safely and, has a little more independence now. And this has helped the family tremendously. They aren't hurting themselves, carrying him up and down the stairs. And I think we are currently working on another one with a very similar situation. So I like that we're able to look at those unique situations based on our geographical area, because sometimes our typical ramps are just not cutting it right now. And that's because I didn't have a big one highlight story. I kind of picked up a couple of other things that I noticed we've been doing a little bit more here in Region 3. This year, we recently are going to fund, we didn't do it yet, but we're going to fund an individual to go to a Prater Willie summer camp. This individual has been wanting to go to Prater Willie Summer Camp for a couple of years now, and the family just couldn't make it work. And so they reached out to us and asked if we would assist with that. We looked it up. It's all good stuff. It's over in Texas, but it is going to be something that the family can get him to and from. And we're just helping the family with the cost of the camp. And this allows the individual to engage in a social activity with his peers, similar, conditions. The camp is designed for children who have the Prader-Willi symptoms where they can't be, the food situation and things like that. They couldn't go into a typical summer camp. So this is allowing him to be able to go into a camp and have a fun summer. And we're very excited about that. The family's very excited. It's going to give him some fun, engaging, and enriching opportunities based on his, special needs. So that was something unique. And our other thing, and I know probably in other areas, you guys are getting requests for assistance for these. The cubby beds, I know that insurances sometimes pay for them and some of the Medicaid plans do, but there are some Medicaid plans that do not fund the cubby beds. I do have a personal account from a family member. Her particular insurance for her child did not fund the cubby bed, and her physicians, they thought it would be really beneficial to the child. And so she came to our office. We talked about maybe changing to another MCO and all that good stuff, but the current plan she was on benefited her child for the doctors he already had established, and it wouldn't have really made a lot of sense to make that family switch their MCO just to obtain this device. So we went ahead and did it, and she actually submitted me her firsthand account and experience of how tremendously the bed has changed their family. So I'm going to just read her quotes from the experience of having the equipment. The cubby bed has made a meaningful difference in my nonverbal autistic son's daily life and overall well-being. Before using it, sleep was often a challenge. He struggled to settle down, sleepless nights, and feel insecure in his environment. Since our family was blessed with the cubby bed, we've since noticed an improvement in his ability to relax and fall asleep more independently. Oh, yes.
Oh, I thought I was on mute. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
that's okay. No problem. I thought you had a question. All right, so back to this. So he is sleeping more independently. The enclosed area is a calming design that provides him with a sense of safety and comfort. Beyond sleep, the cubby bed has become a safe space where he can self-regulate when he feels overwhelmed. As a nonverbal child, it can be difficult for him to express discomfort or anxiety, but having a consistent, soothing environment helps reduce stress and sensory overload. They are also noticed fewer nighttime disruptions and more consistent sleep routine, which has positively impacted his mood, focus, and overall quality of life during the day. For their family, the cubby bed has brought peace of mind. Knowing he is safe, secure, and comfortable allows the family to rest as well. It truly has been a supportive tool in helping him feel more at ease in his own space while promoting better sleep and emotional regulation. So she has actually called our office several times since they received the cubby bed, thanking the community support professional for her assistance in helping to obtain that. So I thought that was important to highlight as well. And that's just some of the things we've been looking at more recently, in addition to all the typical requests that we fund here.
Very nice.
Thank you very much, Kenzie. We
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate, and that really adds to this meeting to hear these personal stories and the impact before we, look at the numbers, in the data that you guys submit every quarter. Do we have any questions for Kenzie? Ms. Karen has a question?
Yes.
Okay. Just wonder, you talk about the hurricane during that time, so the.
Wait, I'm having a tough time hearing. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wonder, you talk about the hurricane time. So I just wonder if during the hurricane time, like that kind of emergency time for the family with the special needs children, how, so the direct support worker is still available for those kind of family, or
Is what's
During a hurricane, I'll just like.
During a
once they
hurricane?
Talk about the hurricane, I just wonder if an emergency time, just such as like a hurricane.
Is what still available?
the direct
Yeah,
service
Regular
workers?
service worker, it is still available for family.
Is she asking if we still provide service workers through IFS?
During like a
During it.
hurricane or some
Yeah.
emergency time, like evacuation in the hurricane.
During a hurricane or an emergency evacuation?
Oh, well, do you mean like from waivers perspective or like IFS funds? I mean, we fund IFS PCA workers based on, a lot, circumstances of that individual's needs, what's going on with that scenario, with that situation. If someone would reach out to us before an expected emergency, I would think that we could, talk about that. We do provide what we call crisis PCA. So, in event of an emergency, but most of the time, those individuals tend to have their emergency plan set up where their families will provide their evacuations. For waivers, a lot of time, if they have a waiver, then they work that out between, their providers to determine if they're going to send workers. That's a family and provider discussion that takes place during their planning meeting to talk about that. So I'm not exactly sure if I was hearing your question right, but
Okay, yeah, I got it.
we do still fund PCA through IFS as well. But each request, we're looking at the whole situation. What do they already have available? What's the plan? What do they need? And so I would think if we would know ahead of time, we could look at that if somebody needed someone to go with them, but it would probably be difficult to arrange that in the midst of like an emergency evacuation plan. But we would look at it.
Yes. So usually the family should prepare an emergency and try the best to get person.
That, I think you bring up a good point, that's why the planning is so important. You gotta do that before.
Right. Yeah, you need to know ahead of time what you're gonna do and have that worked out. We don't typically have anyone on the IFS side that call us for that. Now, sometimes we'll get some calls after the fact. They may need some assistance with maybe damages or, lots of whatever. We look at an emergency situation a little bit different from typical business, and we try to help out as best we can. But normally, those families already have some type of plan in place if they might need to evacuate. And we encourage everyone to, of course, get prepared. Miss Bambi and I'll do a good job sharing that across the state. Anybody else? Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you very much, Kenzie. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now we have, Herman Bigner with, Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. See, Herman, the floor is yours to provide details on your report, which is in our packet.
Thank you. You have in your packet the third quarter expenditure document that lists all of the LGEs, that's the Human Service Districts and Authorities, their budgets and their expenditures and so forth. I'll briefly go over that. We also have the attachment, the Act 73 compliance report. And then you have an issue that was brought up at the last meeting regarding the excessive use of the other category in IFS funding, and I'll briefly go over that with you also. The expenditure report for the third quarter, you'll note that under individual and family support, the total budget was $8,441,444. They expended so far $5,114,826, or 61% of the funds were spent. And so they're on target. I don't think we'll have any problems with them utilizing all of the funds that were budgeted for individual and family support through all the LGEs. You had a balance of what was totally funded of $3 million, $326,618. And actually, the total number of individuals served statewide for the third quarter, up to the third quarter, was 2,866 individuals. Now, if you look at the other side, other part of the chart, the Flexible Family Fund, FFF funding, you had the budget of $5,585,958, expended $4,165,926. So they've expended 75% of the budgeted amount that they had. So they're on target for definitely for utilizing all of those funds also. There were budgeted slots were 1,804 slots that were budgeted. You'll see that they actually filled 1,808. And the cumulative number served so far was, that's statewide, for all of the 10 LGEs, 1,921. And they do have over 2,581 on the wait list for IFS funding. Any questions on this report?
Karen?
I just curious, the IFS, how many organizations facilitate
I'm sorry. Okay.
this IFS, the funding spent for IFS, how many facilitate or how many facilitate included?
How many agencies?
Right, how many facilities?
How many individuals?
Many facilities.
Oh, I make a go up, I'm
The
sorry.
number of people that were
Oh, this is
served?
the first, individual, I saw facility, I'm sorry. Family support, that's a waiver program, so.
Individual and family support. The families are able to request services through the local government entities, your 10 local government entities, metropolitan, capital area, and so forth. All 10 human service districts or authorities, now referred to as local government entities, the LGEs. The individuals and their families can request services. And based on the request and the circumstances, they also have a committee which will hear the request and make recommendations to the DD director on the amount of funding or providing the service that the families request. They can request PCA services, they can request respite services, they can request funding with different incontinence supplies. There's a whole variety of different things they can request funding on. And then the LGE would authorize the funding and do individual contracts with the families or have an agency that will provide the services and bill the LGEs for those services on behalf of the family. So there, like I said, there were in the 2,866 individuals actually received services or funding through the local government entities for the individual and family support.
So that's covered, that's include the waiver program. That's when we talk about the waiver program.
Yeah, many times, some of these individuals may have waiver services. And these funds will basically, if someone is approved for a waiver, hadn't implemented, the waiver hadn't been certified yet, hadn't got the services yet, the IFS can supplement until those services are in place. And many times individuals who don't have waiver services can also make requests for PCA services, respite services, incontinence supplies, rental assistance, different things such as that. And it's based on a priority of need. And there's an operational instruction which gives guidelines to the districts and authorities on how to access those services, how to prioritize those services. They have a committee set up which includes individuals with developmental disabilities and family members that will review those requests and also make recommendations to the DD director on the funding of those requests. And so they can approve them, funded in whole, funded in part, pending. Very seldom do they deny a request. The only time they may defer one is if it can be covered by another resource and they haven't accessed that first.
So here the say the number claim the served number? Is it just a
Cumulative.
cumulative?
Yes.
Okay, so it's just for this year, for this,
Yeah, to this quarter,
this year, okay.
Yeah. to the third quarter of the year. So they'll continue to provide services to those individuals for the next quarter until the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? We'll next go to the next handout, which is the third quarter expenditures for, and it's Act 73 compliance report. Act 73 basically has legislation that was passed that requires the 10 LGEs, the Human Service Districts and Authorities, to identify 9% of the total state general funds that are in their budget for services for Act 378 services, which is IFS and individual and family support. You'll see on the handout that there was $144,113,816 was the state general funds that was allocated or in the budgets for all 10 regions. 9% of that, which is dedicated for the Act 378 services, $12,970,243. And so your total budget for both of the services, that's individual family support and flexible family funds totals, you'll see that they're actually budgeted more than the 9%. They've actually budgeted $14,227,402. So far, they've expended $9,280,752, or 72% of the funding that's budgeted has been expended. You'll notice too that, which is really a good thing, that many of the LGEs have actually put more in the budget for these services than the 9%, which is required by law. You'll see they all met the 9%. You'll see a Acadiana area, HSD, actually put more in the budget than they were required. You had Central Louisiana Human Service District put more in their budget. North Louisiana put more in their budget than was required, the 9%, and Northeast Delta put more in their budget than the 9% that was required. So basically, they've actually included in their budget about almost a little over $1 million more than they were required by law. So that, to me, that's a really a good thing, and it shows how not only does the DD services, but the entire agency, including the executive directors, support this program and are willing to even fund more than is required by law. So that's very good. Any questions on this report? The next attachment that we had was, if you'll see that it's DD Council from the notes from the April the last meeting we had, and it says here on this document, and I want to thank Brandon Crawl from our office who assisted with providing information for these reports and helped me do the analysis of the actual categories where individuals will classify their funding. So you note that at the previous DD Council meeting, a committee member requested a follow-up on the excess use of other categories for Act 378 and individual family support funding. So a review of each of the LGE's budget spreadsheet revealed that several services categorized as others could have been placed in existing categories in the data system. For example, furniture and appliances, cookware, dinnerware, linen could have been placed in household furnishing category. Wipes, you'll notice, and it lists some of the items here in the document that these items could have been placed in other categories that were already on the chart other than putting them in the other category. Further review of the LGE budget spreadsheet revealed that there were a large amount of funds utilized for repeated services without the category being listed. The following categories to address this issue, to limit the amount of services that are indicated under the other category in the funding. We're adding seven additional categories as we did our review to give the Human Service District and authorities, the LGEs, additional categories to add their funding to. For example, we've added 7 categories. There are 18 categories of different services on the data in the data system. So we've added 7 more. So now there's 20. It will be 25 different categories. We've added summer, fall, and holiday activities, day programs, SIL for supported independent living, therapy services, medication and related supplies, lodging and travel, extermination services. These were some of the items that we when we did our research, found that many of the other categories were some of these items so that's why we added these additional categories. So now, since we're doing it almost in the third quarter, you should see a reduction in the next year, end of the year report, because we report on all these service categories at the end of the year. Fewer number of items and expenses or funding in the other category. So it may take the following year before we get it down to almost where we were going to have any in those categories. There'll always be room for some. So we'll be able to track that much easier and give a better full report. At the end of this year, should see a lot less, but the following year is when you're going to see the biggest reduction. We've also provided instructions to the LGEs that when they are entering what they've spent on a particular service, not only what the service is, even if they put in other categories, but how much was spent on that service so we can track it better. So I think we've addressed it with the LGEs, and I think you're going to see a difference, and there should be less items and less expense listed in the other categories at the next 2 reports that we do on actual services. Any questions on this? If you need, I have a list of the current 18 different categories and the other 7 categories. I just went over that we added, but I don't think that's necessary unless y'all really want me to go through that.
No, I just want to say thank you, Herman, and to OCDD for listening to, the questions that this committee had and then making this adjustment. I think it'll be really helpful for us to be able to better understand how these funds will be used and how beneficial they are and what ways they're benefiting our people who need these services. So thank you guys very much for that.
You're welcome. We always want to listen to our consumers and advocates and try to improve things based on their recommendations. And so we always appreciate the DD Council's input. And anytime y'all bringing up something that we feel is going to benefit the families and the individuals we serve, we're going to try to do our best to implement it.
Thank you.
Jill
has a question, and then Brooke.
Okay, so what chart are we on? Because I literally do not see the word other in any of either of these OCDD charts for once.
So Jill, that's a paper that was sent over for OCDD to review. I can send you the paperwork on that. I can email it to you.
Okay, thank
And also
you.
post it on the website.
Okay, cool.
It's just an ongoing follow-up from the big document that y'all got in October that showed all the.
Oh,
different
the thing we get every
Yeah.
October with the, okay, sorry.
No, that's
you're good.
okay.
No problem.
Thanks, Jill. Good question. Brooke?
Hi, I just have one question that I was wondering if we could get a report on, if it's okay. I had recently reached out about families that were unhappy with the wait time between the request that was put in with the support coordinator to when they heard a yay or a nay. And then from that time, a yay or a nay to when they actually received the services. So I was wondering if we could get a report of when the report or when the request is submitted to the LGE and then when the family actually receives the service.
Are you referring to individual and family support? Or are you referring to waiver services?
I think I'm not sure which one. It's just like if they request, like you mentioned, like the extermination or the help with the bill or help with like a rent or a mortgage payment or any of those
Yes.
requests that the families put in. I was wondering if we could get a report on when they request it and then when they actually receive it. Like what is how many days or what's the timeline?
I don't think our data system actually tracks that. I can discuss it with the DD directors to see how they're doing that. Each one of them would be doing it differently. They all have different processes depending on whether they're going to issue a contract with the families. The families are more or less self-directing the services. They hire their own workers, they pay the workers, and the families reimburse for those services. Sometimes we'll contract with an agency to provide the services. So all those different processes take time. So they're all going to be different for depending on the circumstances that the family has in how the district and authorities are processing the different requests. I can discuss it with the LDEs, and I'm really not sure how we would address that. It's going to be so different for each individual family based on the circumstances. There's always a circumstance when someone is in a crisis situation, they're going to try to implement as quickly as possible, immediately, if possible. Then there are always situations where, based on the priority of the need, how long it takes also. If someone is requesting something that's going to take a while, for example, helping with a ramp and funding a ramp and so forth takes a lot longer than if you're going to just fund incontinence supplies for someone. So I can try to get some more information about that, but I'm not sure that we'll be able to track that.
Okay, maybe if we could even do like something at random where they just choose one or two things, like a level one, like something that's like an urgent need. They could just pick something just so we can kind of get like because I hear a lot of families telling me that they're having issues with the timeline, but of course, like I I don't know how we would address that, like how long it takes them to hear back something.
So it's how long it takes from the family to make the request until the actual service is delivered, or how long does it take that when they make the request that the request is heard?
So I would say two, from the families putting in the request to hear like yes or no, it was funded in part or funded in whole, and then from the time the families put in the request to actually receiving whatever that request was. And if we could just get something at random, maybe like a emergency, like okay, let's say like the
Maybe
ramp,
an average of how many days it takes.
right? Or like just an average.
Okay.
And it can just be like taken at random.
Yes. I'll discuss it with the DD directors and see how we might be able to address that for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
In regards to Brooke's question, is that not within the manual, the rules around the IFS funding, their processes? Is there no like timelines involved? Because I know I was involved whenever those were developed, but I forget. So there has to be some type of timeline. I think people shouldn't just be waiting that if it's no, then it's no. But I know most of our agencies, at least my experience, they meet pretty regularly, like every 2 weeks or once a month,
Yeah.
like to review these things. So they should get a response pretty quick.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was a problem never come to my attention.
Yeah.
I've only been involved again now since January.
Uh-huh.
But prior to that, when I helped implement these programs statewide, it never was a big issue.
Yeah.
And anytime a family is having a concern about a delay, they should make that call to
Yeah.
the DD director.
Yeah. Because I'm just wondering if they're making the request to their support coordinator, is the delay the support coordinator
Yeah.
getting information to the LGEs?
Yes.
Or is
Well,
it?
you know, if an IFS request, anyone can make the request for funding through IFS.
Right.
Family support, that qualify in our system. They can
Right.
make the request. A family can make the request. Somebody can make the request on behalf of the individual, or the individual themselves can make the request. Once a request comes in, then it is assigned to one of the staff at the LGEs. They're not really case managers, support coordinators, but they have that similar role in some cases. They have other duties besides that. They will receive the request, they will schedule it, and for the committee to meet to review those requests and to go over the prioritization of those requests and how they're going to fund it.
Right.
Whether, whether the funding is going to be something that's a higher priority, which is going to be taking place much quicker than something that's not as high a priority. And that Family Support Committee helps us determine all of that. And so how often they meet is always up to the DD director and how they implement their program. They're not all the same, they're very similar, but there's going to.
And I think that's, I'm sorry to interject, I think that might be where the disconnect may be between the support coordination and the LGE. But I would just like to figure out so I can say something about it in our, when I meet with we have like the regional RAC meetings. And that's something that consistently comes up with the families.
Talking about the state advisory committee meetings,
Correct, yes.
they also have regional advisory committee meetings, I think, at least we used to.
Yeah.
It's like JP, it's like the Jefferson Parish RAC meeting. But I'm thinking maybe the disconnect is with the support coordinators too, getting that request, like maybe the support coordinators are sitting on it longer than necessary, but there's really no timeline that's being like given to the family. So they're just kind of like waiting in limbo.
Okay. Thank you. I'll discuss it with them.
I think Melinda has a question.
Or Melinda? Melinda Elliott, you recognized? Yes, we hear you.
So I know I've seen that there's a timeline that is in the manual. So yeah, I just don't remember the exact numbers, but I know that I've seen a timeline from when the LGE gets the request to when a determination is made. We get some sometimes I come across families that have been waiting for months, and it seems like there's some kind of breakdown in the situation between the case management and the LGE. But it's my understanding that the LGE doesn't have direct oversight over the case management. So
that is for waiver services, but for individual and family support,
okay.
you're not a case manager, it's a community service specialist that's assigned to review those requests and get them to the committee. And they are employees of the Human Service District and authorities. So they are their employees.
So if I talk to my case management agency like Medical Resources is employed by the LGE?
Yeah, those are waiver providers. Providers that are, they actually are support coordinators that have agreements to actually help the individuals who are certified for home and community waiver services to do their plans of care and to get the services implemented and oversee those particular services. So that's.
So if I'm talking about my needs to my case manager, wouldn't I talk to medical resources since that's my case management agency? And aren't they supposed to bring the request to the LGE? Or do
Yes.
I have that?
If you have a case manager that's a waiver service provider, they're supposed to work with you and your provider, your agency, to help get the needs that you have that's identified in your plan of care. Now, if your waiver case manager says, well, this is not covered by the waiver, we need to contact the Human Service District and Authority to see if IFS can fund it and supplement it. Then maybe that case manager from that waiver service provider support coordination agency can make that referral. But what usually happens is if someone wants to request individual and family support, they can just call that LGE office. They can call the office and say, I'd like to, I need this particular services. How may y'all help me? And then that will be assigned to a worker in that office who will assist that family in developing their little plan of support that they'll also do in their office. And then they
No,
will
sir, that's
also-
not typically what happens. No, sir.
I'm sorry.
The families that I'm working with are talking to their case management agency, like in my daughter's case, just because that's an example, not because they're doing a good job or a bad job, would be medical resources, telling them that they need help with this, and medical resource, I'm assuming, and medical resources is saying that they're going to contact the LGE about it. I should be telling these families to contact the LGE directly?
If the case manager for the case management agency that's providing waiver case management services to the home and community waiver services, then if they say they're going to contact the LGE, they should do that. If the family doesn't hear back, then the family has a right to contact a local agency and make that request themselves.
Okay, but if they're not responsible, they're doing it as a part of what they're doing. I'm looking to figure out who's responsible, because if the breakdown is between the case management agency and the LGE, why am I telling people to contact their case manager in the first place if it's about IFS funds?
Well, the waiver services, depending on which waiver you have, has funds available to help the families also. So that's a different.
For rents, for utilities, for equipment. For all of those?
Huh?
For rent, for utilities, for equipment? Waivers have that built in?
The waiver case management, if you have a waiver service and you have a support coordinator assigned, and that support coordinator is responsible to implement that plan of care to make sure that the individual and the family get the services they need.
I'm pretty sure it's not on the plan of care if I have an emergency and I need rent. So if I need rent, do I contact the case manager like medical resources, or do I contact the LGE? I mean, let's bring it down to personal. I've got an adult child with waiver services. She has a case manager. She needs rent, some type of catastrophe. Does she contact case management or does she contact the LGE?
The support coordinator case management should be your point of contact. If they're not responding, then I would suggest calling the local LGE. They also have staff that can help coordinate with waiver services to make sure things are happening.
So is there a timeline from when I tell my case management agency I need rent to when I should expect it to go to the LGE?
I don't think there's any timelines in the waiver services manual that I'm familiar with about how that would work. But if it's a crisis situation, it should be handled immediately. That's how I would handle it. I can't really speak for the private agencies and how they operate their business. But anytime a family makes a request and has waiver services, that support coordinator's responsibility is to assist that family to get those services they need. If they need it immediately, they're supposed to address that. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the plan of care if it's an emergency that was not anticipated. Or, for example, many of the human service district and authorities, the LGEs have in their family support, they will help with different things such as helping with rental assistance sometimes, with different, whatever the situation is that the family needs. Now, they all have guidelines on how they implement those things, and those guidelines at each human service district and authorities may be a little different. It may take a little longer in one office than it would in another because of the guidelines that they have and how they implement the funding and provision of those services.
But there should be timelines in the manual for the LGE, not necessarily for case management. Okay, who's the chairman of the committee?
This committee, Bambi.
Hey, Bambi, thank you. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Melinda. Appreciate it.
I was gonna say, there were a couple of DD directors that had their hands raised and they went down, so I was just, this is the cue to them, if they did have more info they wanted to share, just to throw their hands back up. Oh, it looks like, they did, so we have, Nicole Sullivan Green and, Kinsey as well.
Okay, you can,
Let's do, I think Nicole's one up first, so she should be.
okay, so Nicole and then Kinsey. Okay, hi, Nicole.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I certainly do not want to speak for any other local governing entities, but we do work with support coordination, just as Ms. Elliott indicated. When someone has a home and community-based waiver, typically what happens is they speak to their support coordinator representative first. And that representative will make a family service request on their behalf for whatever they're requesting, whether it be rent or utility assistance or some assistance for something else that may not be covered by their waiver. We have a standing family support committee meeting that occurs, I want to say, every 2 weeks to review the request for service. If it's a crisis request for service, then it may not go to the committee. It may come straight to me for review. If it's a contractual agreement, then we have to follow all of our contracting process. It has to, the contract has to be developed. It comes to me for signature. It goes to my executive director for signature. And then it goes to the family for signature, then so that whatever contracted reimbursement or contracted service can be initiated. If it's us contracting directly with a provider, same process. The contract is developed with that provider. We get certain provider documentation. I'll sign off on it. It'll go to my executive director to sign off on. And then we have and then it'll go to the provider to sign off so that they have a contract agreement with us to provide that service to the family. If it's something like a one-time funding or a special funding agreement, that's what we call it, for something like for our summer engagement activities or something else that we need to use a vendor that has been chosen by the family directly for like swim lessons or whatever. Then we have to do a narrative explanation to our executive director or her designee, and that our executive director and designee has the final decision making on regarding that approval. They may have additional questions, what have you, but things typically follow that process. We receive a request. The request is typically made by the waiver support coordinator on behalf of the family. We review it in the family support committee. If it's not an emergency or crisis situation that, needs immediate attention, if it does need immediate attention, then we address it. It may need to go up to a higher level, to our executive director, for final approval. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Nicole. It was. Appreciate it. And Kinsey?
Hi, I actually was gonna kind of do the same thing from Region 3's perspective, and honestly, our processes are the same. I think that sometimes there is some delay between the sport coordination agency getting that notification to the LGE. For things like a crisis situation, which immediate rental assistance needed or help with your utilities bill, that's probably considered crisis in most situations. So it goes through this, we recommend that it also goes through the sport coordination agency first, like Jefferson. But if you're not getting any feedback pretty quickly, then maybe you can call up to the LGE and follow up, because that could be, the issue right there. The support coordination agencies are also supposed to try to assist the families with looking at other community resources. And so sometimes that includes reaching out to local churches or charities. They do sometimes assist with things like rent, utilities, those types of things. So that's why you typically go through support coordination first, so that they can make sure there are no other available resources as the LGEs or payers of last resort. But if you've called and made a request and you've got an eviction notice or you've got a disconnect date on your utility, follow up with the LGE, particularly Region 3, but I'm pretty sure most LGEs do that because we all have some type of crisis process, and that would be considered a crisis process. I hope that helped. Pretty much same thing as Nicole was saying. And for us, our IFS committees meet, we have a funding committee and a priority committee, and we meet every other Friday for priority and the opposite Friday for funding. So those things happen in a couple of weeks' time, but there are some things that hold up your request from going to the committee, like if we don't have the documentation that we need, the quotes, there's lots of things that could hold things up that make it a longer process. So, and then funding comes after, depending on that priority level. If you've got a 1 or 2, you'll probably be funded a lot more quickly than a 3 or a 4. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenzie, very much. I saw Melinda and Brooke.
Yeah.
What order?
Yeah, so Brooke and then.
Brooke, then Melinda.
Just from the conversation, it just sounds like maybe the disconnection is from the support coordination. So what can we do as a committee to, because I'm just thinking as everyone's talking and explaining the processes, the family is not on this phone call with us right now. Like, they're not on this committee meeting. So how can we explain to our families like the timeline, because it sounds like we don't really have a time, like the support coordination doesn't have a timeline written in stone. Like they don't have 30 days. It's just immediately. But like immediate for some people, it's different. So I'm not sure, Bambi, what we can do to address this with the support coordinators of how long they may be holding on to or not getting that information. Because I have experience where the LGE has requested quotes, but my support coordinator never let me know that I needed quotes, for whatever request that was.
Those are good points, Brooke. I don't I don't know what the solution is. Let's let Melinda speak and.
So I really appreciate the information from the guy that was talking and the 2 ladies that talked. I'm curious, from any of the people that you have available there, is there some kind of written notification that goes out to families when a decision is made one way or another? Or even like, I think her name is Brooke, was saying that, oh yeah, you need to do this. Is there some kind of written something that goes out to the families?
Herman or Nicole?
Yes, there is the notice, but I would have to check the manual to find out exactly if there's a timeline for that, but they do notify their families that they've request is received, and whether it's funded or so forth. Nicole?
Or Kenzie, do you?
Or Kenzie? Can y'all help me out on this?
Nicole, you're unmuted.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I was trying to figure out how to get unmuted. So there is a notification form that goes out, but if you, in my previous explanation of our process, our broad strokes of our process, we're not gonna send that notification until a final decision has been made. So if a request, for instance, one of our one-time funding requests or that is not a contractual agreement, it has to go up to our executive director. We're not going to send a final note. We're not going to send a notice until we 100% know that that request is being approved, because we don't want to send out verbally or in writing that something is approved and then our executive management comes back and does not approve it. So to Brooke's point, there may be some there may be something that from support coordination standpoint, a case management standpoint, that might cause some delays, but then also in our process is going up to our executive management. And if it has gone to our executive management and they continue and they have additional questions, or we need to go back to the family and get some things, like in Brooke's experience just recently, if I'm allowed to say, I think that are you okay with me talking, Brooke? I don't want to.
Oh, absolutely. Please use me. I get full approval.
Okay. We do summer enrichment activity. That's what we call it. Summer enrichment, summer engagement activities. And right before that season started for us, Brooke also wanted her daughter to receive swim classes because it's an important health and safety issue for her daughter to continue to learn how to navigate waterways. Because as you know, a lot of times children with autism and other developmental disabilities are attracted by the calming aspect of water. And so they go to water, and it's very important that they know take as much safety precautions as possible. And one of the ways that Brooke is trying to achieve that for her daughter is through swim classes. And so that request had gone up to our upper management, and they came back with some concerns about the risk mitigation. And then we ended up consulting our legal, and we had to get a hold harmless thing done. And so it became more than what it typically would do in previous years. And so I certainly could understand what Brooke is talking about in regards to timeline, because in that particular situation, it took longer than it typically would take for her, than it would take in previous years for her to ultimately receive the funding for that swim class. And so I just use that as an example because that was something that happened recently. I can't remember how I started this question off, but I hope that answers some of the potential issues that could come up when we're trying to do requests for service and we're trying to provide funding. Because when it goes up to a higher level, questions that I may not have had, someone else might have, who's looking at it from a different set of eyes or lenses,
So Nicole, I guess in a situation like you were talking about, what you just shared, about the swimming lessons and that type of thing, I assume Brooke or the person was kept aware of the process. Or I mean, there should be something where the person is kept aware that it's being addressed and there's additional steps that are needed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we try to do that, but it's still frustrating. It's still frustrating because the response that you're getting, and I don't want to speak for Brooke, but I could understand as a parent myself the frustration because you're told that it's in process. Well, it's with our upper management, it's in process. And, in that situation, it had to go to our legal. And so we're still it's in process. So
right. And my issue, can I speak? Sorry,
yeah,
Bambi.
go ahead. I don't want to speak for
so
you.
my issue with the timeline for that is swim lessons for an autistic child, they're expensive, so they have been funding the swim lessons consistently. And I tell the business, the swim company, oh, it's with upper management, it's going to be approved, but they still need their money, you know? So it's like, okay, now Ava's without swim lessons a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Now, when she goes back a month and a half or 2 months later, like she's regressed, you know, because it's not as consistent as it was. But it's like I put in the request months in advance, so it's just like, how many months should we put? You know, I have no problem with putting in a request 6 months in advance if that's what's needed. But it's just like there's nothing written about timeline, so I'm not sure. You know, like of course that was a hiccup that we didn't expect, but it's just like with the support coordination, it's like they'll ask for some of the information, and it's like, okay, can I also get this and also get this? But it's like the average family doesn't, you know, like they're not Johnny on the spot like I am, and I'm like sending it right back. So that I think those are where the issues are coming through with the timelines, and how I think it would be beneficial if we got something more written in stone once it's with executive. You know, like they can only tell me like it's with our executive team right now. I'll let you know when we hear something back, you know.
Not really sure where to go with this.
Miss Bammy, I don't know how to raise my hand on the thing, but I have something to say
Okay, Derek.
about what we talk about with the timeline and the support coordinators. They wanted us to do more chasing what we need and then them chasing what they need to chase. And then we sit in a gap where we got our hands tied, and then we send the paperwork and we send what we need to send. And then they constantly come back to you and say, oh, we didn't receive that. We need you to get this. We need you to get that. And I understand what Brooke's saying is about the timeline is because when get pushed up against the wall, then oh, it's something you didn't do, but then we we do what we need to do, like present. I'm in a situation right now, I need something, and I've been waiting for months and months and months and months, and then the post coordinator and came back to me 3 or 4 times and said, oh, I need you to get this, or I don't have this paperwork, and I got records that I have gave the paperwork. So I understand what she's saying when she's saying the timeline.
Thank you, Eric. Ebony?
So, Mr. Herman, I know, like, I'm thinking about when a person is linked to a support coordination agency. So that support coordination agency has about 3 days to contact that family. And then they have about 10 days to go out and see that family to discuss like services and getting a plan in place. And so is there something similar to that we can put in place for IFS funding? Like, okay, once the support coordinator gets the request, they have 2 days to submit the request to the LGE. And this is just for support coordination, because I know every LGE is different and they're gonna have their own different processes, like Nicole and Kinsey just pointed out. But I think that there needs to be some standardization for across support coordination agencies, similar to when a person is linked to the agency and they're about to start services. So that since there's not a clear timeline, at least the support coordinator knows that, okay, once I get this request, I have 2 days to get it into the LGE. I know they have a lot going on. People have like 40 people on their caseload, or individuals on their caseloads, and they have a lot. But if they have something sound like that, I do believe that it will be followed, because when a person is linked, they have a certain amount of time to get to that person, or the support coordination agency will get docked.
You have waiver requirements, you have waivers, the applications approved by CMS that have different requirements and they have to meet. You have the support coordination agencies, or the freedom of choice where the family chooses support coordination agencies and the support coordinator is responsible. There may be some timeline. I'm not familiar with all those manuals, but there may be some timelines in those manuals about how long it takes to get a fund, you know. I know there's a lot of times where there's holdups in some of these. Even if you have the requirements in there, sometimes there's holdups based on not getting the information while you're waiting for the information and so forth. So there's some timelines, but you gotta keep in mind, you got two different agencies you're talking about. You got the home and community waiver side and support coordinators. They have a director. Each of the agencies have their director of executive director or CEO over those case management agencies, and they hire the case managers to provide those services. Then you have the human service districts and authorities. They have employees, different classifications that will receive a request for family support and process that request. There may be something in the manual that may have some timelines about how long it takes. I know we have specific timelines of when someone applies for eligibility, they have so many days to do different things. I'm not sure about the IFS timelines on once you receive a request, how many days you have to implement it. Because it's going to be very difficult because there's so many different things that have to happen based on the individual circumstances of the person, the family support committee, the priority of the funding, whether the executive director has to find it, whether legal has, there's so many different timelines that you would have to be aware of. So it's going to be very difficult to set some timelines on some of those activities. That's why I said I feel free to discuss it with the DD directors. Y'all had an issue about the timelines for support coordination agencies, but that might be something that OCDD, when they have their quarterly meetings with the case management agencies, that it can be addressed. There's some concerns about how long it's taking for a request to be submitted, something like that. But that might be something that I can ask the coordinator at OCDD who schedules those particular meetings with the provider and case management agents. That might be something they can bring up at one of their meetings, that there's some concerns from families about how long it's taking to get the family service request submitted. I'll mention that to the coordinator of the case management agencies for OCDD.
Okay, Karen?
I just have a question about the Act 73 compliance report. The 9% of STI, what's in the STI?
I'm sorry, which document?
What that means, the STI is for the 9% of annual
Yeah, so you have your total budgeted for ICF,
STI. what's that mean?
IFS.
That's just state general fund,
Yeah, you got the
state general fund.
Oh, state.
and then the IFS is individual and family support, IFS. And the FFS is flexible family fund. That's that cash subsidy, $258 a month that families can receive if they qualify for the services, and their name comes up first come, first served on that list for flexible family fund. Used to be called cash subsidy, but now it's called flexible family fund. When I established it,
So that
Oh,
that
okay,
fund's
so-
different with the waiver program.
sorry,
That fund's different with the waiver program.
yes,
Oh,
that's state general funds. So
okay.
each of the LGEs has budget allocated by the legislature.
So. Oh, right.
Got it.
So this, but you said compliance report, so the 9%, that means 9% of the money you using for the.
Yeah, under the
Compliance
Act,
case.
under Act 73, it required that the human service district and authorities, the local LGEs, you'll see their names listed on the chart, all the 10 LGEs. You have all 10, it used to be called regional offices or regions. Now, they get money from the legislature, state general funds, okay? Not federal funds, but state general fund dollars that are appropriated by the legislative process. And so this legislation said that 9% of the total state general funds that LGE gets, that regional office, the entire agency. Because in the LGEs, they provide services to persons with developmental disabilities. They provide what's called behavioral health services, which include services for persons with mental illness and or addictive disorders. That's the main services that those LGEs provide for the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals. And they get some state general funds. And of the state general funds that they're all allocated statewide, that's where you got that $144 million. 9% of that under legislation has to be identified and used for IFS, Individual Family Support and Flexible Family Fund services. They have to budget that money to fund those families for those services. 9%. Most of them, as you'll see on the document, at least put in their budget the 9%, and several of them put more than the 9%. So actually, they usually fund more than the 9% by the end of the year. So I'm looking at the chart. So it's about close to $1 million more that they put in their budgets than they're all required by law to do. So they're doing really, really well with that, I think.
So, so the 9% will not serve for waiver program. They just serve for this two.
No, well,
FIS under.
yeah,
FIS.
yeah, 9% is, and this is the report for 3 months. The third
Okay,
quarter.
just for these two services.
Yeah, for those two services, the individual family support and the flexible family fund for the quarter. Now, at the end of the year, we'll have a report for the end of the year. And we'll also have the report where we specify what was spent on different kinds of services and so forth. But that's done once a year. These reports are done every 3 months.
Okay, so we haven't any report of summary for waiver program services, right?
No, this committee doesn't talk about waiver services at all.
Oh, I saw the support individual, the home community based, so I saw it.
Yeah, so the DD Council will address waiver services a lot in their committee meetings, but for this particular committee, we just look at the Act 378 funding, which that's basically usually state general funds for the most part, but they're I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but like for the DD services, it's the flexible family funds and the individual family support. And then also behavioral health, which we'll be talking about the behavioral health services as well. So yeah, it's not waivers, it's not waiver services in this committee, in this particular committee meeting.
Self-determination
That's
covers
SDCI.
the waiver.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions for Herman or regarding our developmental disabilities reports? Okay, is Kelly on for the?
No, she had an emergency, so we'll just get her update at the next quarterly meeting.
Okay.
But
So-
everyone has the report. You can see all the information for this quarter.
Okay, so, and I was referring to the ARC of Louisiana's report, so we'll get that next time. So now we'll move on to the Office of Behavioral Health. Is Dr. Sabicki on? Okay, so Dr. Sabicki will give her report from the Office of Behavioral Health.
Hello, are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Okay. So this is the third quarter report from the all the regional local governing entities on we're looking right now on their reporting on the Consumer Care Resources Fund, all used for clients who are eligible for these supports based on their behavioral health needs. So this, as we're in the third quarter, what we expect to see, what we hope to see if LGEs are on track to expend all of their funds, we expect to see them somewhere in the 70 to 75% range in terms of how much they've expended so far. You'll notice that some LGEs are under that. In all cases where the LGEs are sort of under where we'd expect them to be, they've all offered information in the notes section, suggesting how they're planning to ensure that all of the funds are allocated by the end of the year. So they all have plans in place and do all expect that they will expend all the funding by the end of the fiscal year. So y'all can review that or ask any questions, any questions on the consumer care resources funding.
Don't see any questions.
None online.
Okay, Karen?
I just wonder, so you focus on behavior, the 20%. So this service is focused on behavior. Behavior issue, the needs, right? Just the request, any request for. Yeah,
It's on this way, what report?
This one.
Yes, this is behavioral, yeah, Office of Behavioral Health.
Right, so that's, so this is the individual agency different.
No. So now we're getting the reports for the Office of Behavioral Health. These are the people who have to qualify for behavioral health services, but it's still within each of those local government entities. So what we heard before was each of those local government entities, but that was their developmental disability services, or people who qualify for developmental disabilities. Now we're hearing about the reports for the behavioral health side. So every local government entity that's listed here, they have a developmental disability side and they have a behavioral health side. So now we're hearing about the behavioral health services.
So this not have to be, this just for the DD people, I mean, DD people only, is any people has behavior issue. Not
Right.
to be DD people.
So Dr. Savicki, the people who are receiving these services, they don't have to have both they don't have to have a developmental disability necessarily. They just have to meet the requirements for behavioral health disability, right?
That's correct. These funds, the allocated funds that you see in the initial budgets here, are funds that each LGE has allocated for consumer care resources for individuals and families that work with them based on their mental health, behavioral health needs. They don't have to qualify on both sides. They just have to, for these funds, they qualify based on a mental health or behavioral health need.
And you said the local office, is it the same office?
It's the same office.
Still LDH under.
It's still in LDH, yes.
Just a different area. Like a recent capital area.
So yeah, so if you're looking at capital area, they have the developmental disability side and they have the behavioral health side. Now we're hearing about what they do. So for each region, we're hearing about what they do for in the behavioral health side. So that's what we're focusing on right now. Okay. All right, I think we got it. Thank you, Vicki. Any other questions for that, for the consumer care resources? Okay. All right, you can move on, Dr. Savicki.
Okay, and thanks. And let me know, Bambi, I could only hear some of the questions. So, and it sounds like you were answering it very nicely, but let me know if there's anything you need from me. All right, so flexible family funds. As you know, these are for this is the flexible family fund that's offered to families who qualify based on a child's mental health or behavioral health need. And what we look at here is that we want to see that all of the budgeted slots, all of the slots that each LGE has budgeted, we want to see that those are filled, and so that funding is going to eligible families and providing that support. And so as you see, they are all they're all doing pretty well. You know, there certainly are times when there'll be a slot or two that they're working on filling because when a youth, you know, ages out, for instance, they need to go then back to their waiting list and find the next eligible child and family. So sometimes that takes a little time to work through that and contact people. But we want to see at least 90% of those slots filled in any given time, and all of the LGs are at that standard right now. Any questions on that?
I don't see any. Oh, sorry. Karen?
So one more question, just,
We have one question.
usually the budget, I mean, they, based on the claims for that time, right? Or have a waiting list, usually, so like this quarter is getting more claims or based on the funding available, how many people they can serve?
For which one?
Yeah, it would all be based on funding. That'll determine how many they can serve, yeah.
So currently the funding is still the same thing or there's still.
So I would say the fund, well, it depends on how much funding the legislature allocates
Right.
LGE. So it could change, it could go up or it could go
So
down.
every year they change, or every year they need to make a decision.
Yeah, every year the legislature decides how much funding that each LGE is gonna receive.
I'm just thinking if the people has that issue, it looks to take a long time. Usually they take a long time. Just when they get that that service, it looks like a renewal every year automatically. Most of people, I'm just thinking, right? They can just sometimes they can really feel at out of this service. So they usually.
So the legislature provides a budget to each LGE, then each LGE makes a decision on their budget. They'll make a decision for their DD services, what they're gonna do. They'll make a decision for their behavioral health services. So they make those decisions. And then as people, so the consumer care resources and the flexible family funds, those are based on requests of needs. Or that's for the consumer care resources, and then the flexible family funds, that's like a waiting list to basically they'll get a slot for their monthly funds. But this isn't all the behavioral health services that an LGE provides. They also can provide direct services and different kind of services. This is just the services that they provide under this Act 378. So people can get other behavioral health services from the LGE. This is just two of their programs.
So that special program for some special services.
Yeah.
Not cover like all the issue with mental health.
That's right.
So not like hospital care or
right.
other emergencies.
Or they can see their doctors and that the service providers at the LGE. This is just two programs. Is that correct, Dr. Savicki?
Yeah, no, these are actually very small programs in terms of the behavioral health array. You know, the flexible family fund is obviously that direct monthly cash subsidy, but you know, primarily healthcare services, including mental health services, are paid for by health insurance, which in a lot of cases is Medicaid. So there's a wide array of mental health services that are covered by Medicaid insurance. So that's the typically who pays for those services. And the LGEs provide behavioral health services through Medicaid. There's you know, a large network of private providers who provide those services. That's kind of a whole different you know, network and array. This report is really just about this kind of, you know, kind of small allocation of funding that provides either fulfills those direct requests from families or provides that direct cash subsidy to families.
Just like compare the past, you think the case is increase or decrease? What's the situation for current collect, just like how many claims, it's increased or decreased? Like, recently, it's the claims, is it more claims or not that much?
We'd have to look historically at the data,
Yeah.
but
I would venture to say in general, it probably increases. I mean, there's usually been an upward trend throughout all services, like waivers every year. We get more people that are asking for waivers or receiving waivers. And so in general, we've seen the utilization increase, I guess. But without additional funding, you're not specifically with like flexible family funds. It's going to be hard to pull off that waiting list if you don't increase the funding, because a lot of these folks that are on it this year may also be on it next year, more so than maybe consumer care resources or IFS, because those are more specific funds for a specific need at that time, whereas flexible family fund can keep continuing. So in theory, you may have someone that could potentially be eligible through their 18 and keep popping up on that list.
I saw the capital area has much more cases, 1,000.
but they serving more people in capital area.
Yeah.
That's how many people they served.
Penn region, during the lots of people, so they
That's,
had much more, I'm just,
They had 1,200 people that they served.
that is a lot more than the other regions.
Yes.
So the question, Dr. Savicki, she's looking at
capital area.
the CCR and for capital area that they've served 1,224 people as a community cumulative served, and that is much more than, I mean, it's almost 2/3 of the total state.
Yeah, these are really, the numbers are really dependent on how each particular LGE is using their funding. So some LGEs may be using their funding on a smaller number of individuals because they're funding something really expensive for a smaller number of families. Whereas capital area may be using their funding for, you know, something very small for a larger number of families. So if you want to look in the notes section, the LGEs do provide some information about how they've been using the funding. I think capital area has, it looks like they've been using, so for instance, funding for school supplies for a large volume of kids. So that's why you're seeing a lot of different numbers there. It's just a matter of how they end up finding this funding the most useful to the people in their community.
You usually have to, the people should have a diagnosis from the psychiatrist.
Yeah. They have to meet the people who are receiving these have to meet the criteria for behavioral health services. There's a certain criteria to get these funds, is what she's asking.
Wait, sorry, is that a question for me?
Yeah, I'm just want you to confirm that in order
Yeah,
to.
yeah. This is typically someone who has a mental health need, has a diagnosis of some form of mental health concern, is seeking some form of mental health services. And then in addition to the mental health services that they need, they may also need something to be funded that's not paid for by Medicaid or health insurance. So for instance, you know, school supplies, or we've seen at times, you know, a youth with a behavioral health need having their driver's ed course paid for, so that they can, you know, move towards an independence in that way. Or, you know, you'll see lots of different examples in the notes section about ways in which these funds have been used to support individuals with behavioral health needs.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Savicki, but I don't think we have any more questions for those two reports.
All right, this is the supported living report, and as you know, as folks are probably aware, this is only a handful of the LGEs do allocate this funding for this particular type of program. Again, we look to see around, you know, 75% or more of the funding to be expended by this point in the year. The only LGE that's not there is capital area, and that's really has been their funding pattern. They use a different funding source first, and then they typically catch up by the end of the year. So we don't have any concern with that right now. Any questions on this?
I don't see any questions. Have any other questions for Dr. Savicki? For the Office of Behavioral Health? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so, that concludes all of our reports. Please note that the executive committee meeting will be held on April 30th, starting at 8:30 a.m. with the full council meeting following at 10 a.m. Both meetings will be held in this same room. And then those of you who have registered or will register, participate virtually, you should receive those links in an email. Does anyone on the committee have any other announcements to make? Yes, Stephanie?
On Tuesday, April 21st is the second day of the planning committee meeting. It will be from 9 to 1. And that information was sent out on LADBC News, and it's on the website to register. If you would like to come virtually, it will also be in this room, so you're welcome to come in person. Okay.
Will you mail me that packet?
Already got you, girl. It went out today.
Okay, does anyone do we have anyone wishing to make a public comment?
No, we don't.
Okay. So I hereby adjourn the meeting at 1:44 p.m. Thank you all for attending and your participation.